Happy New Year, I'm Jackie Ferris. This week on the 302, we have a one-on-one with Delaware Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall Long about what's in store for 2024. Get ready, the 302 is headed your way. We are at the offices of Delaware Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall Long to talk about what's in store for 2024. Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's great, Jackie, to be with you in 302. We have a lot of really good things ahead for Delaware in 2024. And some of the top items, again, you've been here with me in the past.
3 years.
3
yes.
years and it's going, during COVID even.
Mm-hmm.
And behavioral health continues to be a top item, certainly education. And also, you know, we're creating in Delaware a unique rare disease council. So I hope we have a chance to have that conversation today.
Absolutely. Now, I looked back at last year's conversation about the behavioral health consortium, and you had said that there were 117 goals that were identified and reached because of monies from the opioid settlement. Mm-hmm. So talk to us a little bit about, you know, we've reached that milestone. Do we have new goals, mm-hmm. and what are the new needs in the area of mental health and addiction in Delaware?
You know, we are so thrilled. You know, Delaware is the first in the nation to have the overdose system of care, and collaborating with our Attorney General's office, we have, fortunately to their actions, the Opioid Abatement Fund. That is something that's newer since you and I had our first conversation 3 years ago. If you recall a quick 30-second summary, the BHC was created because we had fractures and failures across the system, whether corrections, education, health and social services, and behavioral health, which includes mental health and substance use disorder. So as you know, we had a roadmap of 117 goals that came from 600 persons up and down the state of Delaware, and we were so thrilled to have met those goals. New plans are in place around issues of stigma, family and policy, outreach, education, corrections, and law enforcement. Sounds like a lot. What the takeaway for the viewing audience is, in Delaware, we are leaning in and directing funds not only for those with addiction, with opioid crisis, but we are also actively making sure that we're putting monies and actions into good policy in our state. And again, that could be a young child with autism to an adult with Alzheimer's, brain health. Mm-hmm. But we've got some really exciting things, you know, that we are doing around mental health and the opioid crisis.
So, you know, when we talk about, you know, the game plan, we're a couple of years into this, mm-hmm. and what have we learned and where are we going? Are we getting a handle on it, you think?
Well, you know, behavioral health and mental health during COVID became really apparent. You know, social isolation and uptick in depression and anxiety. Big initiatives in America called the 988, and I hope those listening in, if they're home alone, have thoughts of self-harm or suicide, that both, whether in the region of Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, the listening audience, they can call 988 and get help. We have learned that individuals are speaking up more, but we've also seen a tremendous uptick in our youth and mental health in our young adults. And we really have to stay ahead. And so those trends, along with the terrible fentanyl, which is the really potent, like a little tab size of a grain of salt in any substance, whether it's marijuana and cocaine, whether it's in heroin, can kill. And we're really educating youth that one pill can kill. So again, that fentanyl component has really been deadly. And unfortunately, in areas, we're also seeing people put something called tranq. That is newer, and it's a xylazine, and it's eating skin. So Delaware, we were the first in the country to have a female-owned business create a fentanyl xylazine strip. So again, people can test in advance. We recognize everyone has, a unique journey, and people come to sobriety at different levels. So if an individual is still using, we want them to be safe, and we want them certainly to get treatment. But at the same time, Delaware had the opportunity with a minority-owned business, with a company called Salvat, to really create a mutual one-strip fentanyl and xylazine. And xylazine is just such a really skin necrotic eating problem with tranquilizer. And so we are working really hard to make sure to get ahead of this. And so those are the things that we've really seen an uptick over the past year since our last, behavioral health conversation. The issues of mental health in our children and the need for education, the issues around xylazine and our fentanyl, and the continued issues around suicide ideation, and also just mental health in general.
Absolutely. And when you talk about young kids, I know that, being a kid is hard enough, but then you factor in social media, and it's so hard.
It is. And our leaders, our Speaker of the House Longhurst and others in our health committees have really led nationally, even in Delaware, by putting resources, mental health counselors, in our schools, not only in our high schools, but our middle schools, and working with elementary schools. We've worked hard. And to have wraparound services, so not only when the children are in school, but to really make sure that we have community health workers who are engaged in behavioral health, getting people to appointments, making sure that they have access to insurance, or if they don't have insurance, getting the coverage that Delaware has through our unique Bridge program. And our director of Department of Substance Abuse and Mental Health, we've been very creative in trying to get harm reduction, the Narcan in the community, and also the testing strips. So again, doing the full wraparound with those who are unfortunately experiencing substance use disorder.
It sounds really proactive, and I know it's difficult when you're in that space, no matter who you are, dealing with mental health. A lot of people just don't know where to go or what to do.
Right, and the stigma around that. So in Delaware, by calling 211 or our Hope Line or 988, we also are working on legislation. When I was a senator, we actually created psychiatric advance directives, a draft. Good bills take some time. And so that is being reintroduced now in Delaware. And so when a person who has some form of mental health, whether it be schizophrenia, bipolar, anxiety, depression, they can put in place a narrative, a directive to say, when I'm in crisis of mental health, these are the things I hope that you have in place for me. Because when someone is in an active crisis, again, their cognition isn't the same, and they're not able to make rational decisions. And so by having these directives in advance, we can help one another. So again, I'm really excited, with our BHC to be leading the country and to really be leading around those initiatives in mental health.
Speaking of initiatives, when we come back, we're going to talk about early childhood education. Stay with us.
I'm Debbie Harper, the Curator of Education here at the George Read II House in Newcastle, and I love talking about history in miniature on the 302.
Welcome back. We're talking about what's in store for 2024, and we're chatting with Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall Long. Now, I know that you are a big champion of early childhood education because that's where it all starts.
Yes. Absolutely, and thank you. I've had the opportunity as Lieutenant Governor and prior in the legislature to serve on the education committees, and this year have done through a wonderful consortium, an early learning collaborative with the Hunt Institute over the past couple years, looking at best practices along with Delaware's own Learning Council. Because again, we don't duplicate or replicate efforts. What we know is this: early education matters. A couple reasons. First and foremost, to me as a mom and a nurse and a professor, myself for over 30 years as an educator, children who come equipped to kindergarten really excel later in life and career in college. Also, our youngest, most vulnerable children, often in poverty, often perhaps communities of diverse backgrounds, have often more challenges when they enter school if they haven't had the same opportunity. And being a science geek, as a professor, The data speak for themselves. Birth to 5, you have 1,825 days where 90% of a brain is developed. Think about that. So a young child who may be not having the same reading opportunity or a loving relationship comes at a disadvantage. We can bring equity in education for career and college success the earlier we start. And the data are there. It's been studied across America. And so I'm thrilled in Delaware. One of the items that I'm working on with others in our Delaware Senate, Senator Gay, Senator McBride, and also Representative Williams, and Senator Lockman, and many others, we're looking at the impact of early education, really important. To me, it's a game changer. To me, we have to really accomplish that. I see when I chair in the other end of life, the justice-involved community, I chair the Board of Pardons. Many individuals, childhood trauma, lack of early education, appropriate education comes to play later in life when they're in the justice-involved system. So it's a real win for Delaware in education and in justice. Also, as you can imagine, for workforce, really important issue. I don't know in your travels, not only here in Delaware, but in the region, the Eastern region, during COVID, you probably witnessed what we experienced, workforce shortage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the number one reasons, again, being a little data driven, Delaware, we did a study. And 80% of young adults who have children who are under the age of 5, 80% said they did neither buy a house or take a job because of the expense of childcare. So to me, having state-involved universal access to early education is a must-do. So we are working diligently on looking at opportunities, programs with our business community as well. That workforce, whether the waitress in the front line or the clerk working here in the state or some private entity, scientist, if they don't have daycare or daycare that they cannot afford, it really affects our workforce in the state. So early education, to me, is a really top priority.
Absolutely. I know that there are a lot of companies and a lot of people that are transitioning from, hybrid positions or working from home, and they just can't make that transition back to, full in-office attendance because they've had children and there's just no opportunity there. So if somebody wanted to know more about, the kinds of opportunities available in Delaware, where do they go?
Well, they can certainly contact our office, visit our website. We also, through the collaborative with the Department of Education, and then we also have many wonderful, incredible nonprofits in the state who are working on this, such as the Rodell Foundation, as well as working with nonprofits like the Latin American Community Center and others who've been at the table, who've been working really diligently, and certainly our state Department of Health and Social Services. Do you know, when we started this, that we had 3 departments and 11 sections across the state, just like behavioral health was a little fragmented. We've now brought that down to trying to get it into 1 to 2 departments. Hopefully we'll get it to 1. And we're for families who need something of help with payment called purchase of care. We're working really hard to up that. And thanks to members of the General Assembly here in Delaware, they've been able to up some of the reimbursement rates for purchase of care, and we're looking at funding formulas. Like I said, I know Senator Kyle Gay and others are working really hard on this in the legislative side, but also we are working from the regulatory side to streamline, not just moving chairs around a deck, but really putting incredible thought into how we're going to make Delaware a place where young adults come, they live, they work, and raise a family. And one of the reasons I envision will be, as we launch into the future, available, accessible, universal childcare.
So it's kind of like an umbrella approach. It's knowledge, nutrition, support, just everything that the child and the child's family needs to get this child off to a good start.
Absolutely. And people like Representative Moore, who's sponsoring legislation this year around early childhood, food and nutrition, so that when children, she's a teacher, when children come to school, that they have access to free breakfast and free meals. It really matters. I go out on the streets. I'm the undercover lieutenant governor. During COVID, I vaccinated 4,000 people in 5 months in the community. And when I'm out in the community visiting and with families, food and hunger is real. Lack of housing security is real. And so providing those tools that some children perhaps may not have access to at home, and having that for 8 to 10 hours in early education is a great resource, or in our school system. So this is not going to compete. We obviously are going to continue to make really good reforms, working with our schools, our school teachers. We've upped the salaries for school teachers in Delaware, trying to get the best and brightest teachers in the most high-risk schools. So it's a kind of a process from cradle to grave, early ed to high school to career to greater success. And at the end of the day, it's about a healthy Delaware and a healthy economy in Delaware.
That sounds good. Now, when we return, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about a new initiative to deal with rare diseases in Delaware. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Rebecca Duffy, Curator of Education at Reed House and Gardens, and I always watch the 302 for the best events in Delaware.
Welcome back. We're having our What's in Store for 2024 with Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall Long to talk a little bit about rare diseases. And I did not realize there are 7,000 rare diseases.
Yes, there are. As a professor of nursing and research scientist, I have had the privilege of working with families here in Delaware and in other regions of the country. My husband, having United States Navy, have been in many areas where there are rare disease. And Delaware has, here in 302, a number of families who struggle to get care with rare disease. There are indeed 7,000. Some that people think of more readily are things like cystic fibrosis, sickle cell, those are well known. But there are many other blood disorders, many other muscular, many other neuro, many other pulmonary, cardiac, you name the body organ. And unfortunately, for some individuals, this cuts their lives short. For parents, it's a life-altering day when they get that diagnosis for their child. So for myself, Senator Poore, Representative Krista Griffith, we put together a piece of legislation that was signed by our legislature this year, and we're going to have the Rare Disease Advisory Council, and it's housed here in the Lieutenant Governor's office. So really excited about that.
So when we talk about rare diseases in the legislation, just navigating the healthcare system is rough enough. Is there a piece of it that, will advise the community on where to go or who to talk to?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah, well, you need, it's kind of like a resource hub and a kind of a clearinghouse and an opportunity for those who have struggled in our small state to find resources or referrals. Many, obviously, because of the technical science and the severe neurologic or physiological impact this has on the body, have to travel or utilize telehealth or other mechanisms for their families. I actually discovered a lot of this when I was campaigning years back as a state senator, door to door. I went to a man's home, the Patel's home. They have 2 children with significant issues. By the age of 10, they needed a lung transplant, heart transplant, organ failure. I learned by listening. Senator Nicole Poore has her own passion, her own interest with her family's experience. Representative Griffith has experience. So all of us as moms, came at this with a real specific lens, saying, let's create a position. Let's have a resource opportunity for outreach, for education, and where we can make referrals. Where can people go to get resources and be part of the national? There's a national organization that deals with rare disease, and let's link in so that every Delawarean, whether they're down in Subbyville up to Claymont, have an opportunity to know where to go and who to call. And right now they would be linking in through my office And we have a fantastic partnership with also our higher institution, the University of Delaware, working with one of their policy students to make sure that we are making every best practice that is accessible, available here to Delawareans.
When you talk about resources, I mean, that is a huge mountain to climb for a family. You're just so overwhelmed by the diagnosis, you find out where to go, but is there a piece of it that, you know, with the cost, that's like the second mountain to climb, and I know that it can be a tough decision to decide, am I going to get this treatment or do I have to wait?
Right, and you know, that comes down to different funding mechanisms. You know, again, access to care, quality care, and funding. The costs are always the main tenets of health policy. To us, we have to make sure that the resources are present. Many of these individuals will rely on their parents or their own health insurance with their companies or employers. Some will be with your state Medicaid programs, which are both federally and state funded programs. Many will have to wait for research classifications, you know, for pilots and projects. We are blessed that in Delaware, where we're located, we have a number of new therapies, genetic therapy, biopharmaceutical therapies. You know, serving on the National and Innovation Manufacturing Biopharma Board as a voting member, you know, we want to make sure that good research, good science, good tools, good treatments are accessible to these children for quality of life. You know, genetic therapy now is really addressing critical visual impairments and blindness. We are seeing major rapid change with response in gene therapy with sickle cell. So we have to make sure that our families have the access, whether it's through insurance, whether it's through clinical trials, and we need to make sure that no one in Delaware is left behind. And so the purpose of the Rare Disease Council is to really make sure that we have the resources, we have the referrals, and that any family member that is experiencing this, no matter the age, doesn't have to be just children. I know I've focused a little bit more on children so far, but it can be of any age, that we will make sure to try to get the resources and get them connected.
So next year, hopefully, we'll be here talking about what's new for 2025. I have to come up with something that rhymes with 25. So, you know, just kind of like looking in your crystal ball, where do you think, you know, the council will be? What will be its new goals, you know, as we move through this year, heading into the following year?
You know, I think as we develop the council, it's exciting to have the leading partners, not only those residing in, that are incorporated here in Delaware, but I can't wait, because we live in the technologically Zoom world, that we will be making sure Delawareans have the access, whether it's research through the Mayo Clinic, whether it's research through other institutions, not only here in our own community and our own campuses, but that we have that roadmap. And so our goal would be, just like the Behavioral Health Consortium, that we would have a clear roadmap with very clear set goals and begin to meet those and have baseline thresholds, because I want Delaware to be where people want to live, work, and raise a family. And it's been really important to me through the years that we have that kind of marketplace, because I do know that we're a special place. That 302 really is a special place. And so I look forward very much to when you visit again in 25 to talk about the council being up and running, clear goals set, and the fact that we will have already reached out to a certain number in our community and population, and bottom line, helping families.
Well, Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for joining us. Your advocacy is inspirational, and we will see you next year.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Are you enjoying our chat with Lieutenant Governor Bethany Hall Long? Well, make sure you follow us on Facebook to get some behind-the-scenes content you're just not going to see anywhere else. Now, here are a couple of other things you might want to check out. For more information on any of the programs we spoke about, you can visit lieutenantgov.delaware.gov. That'll do it for this week's episode of the 302. Make sure you follow us on Facebook for behind-the-scenes content you're just not going to get anywhere else. Until next time, I'm Jackie Ferris. Tell them you saw it on the 302.